Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to It's K to Be Karen with another coverage of a poem which we will be covering. So, inside your 2026 DSE syllabus, we have a poet named Emily Dickinson, as you can also see, which has been mentioned on this particular slide. And Right, so kind of our last few videos, we've been covering another poem by Emily Dickinson, which was called Like Rain, It Sounded Till It Curved. And in the next few videos, we will be covering There Is a Certain Slant of Light. Now, again, our goal is to kind of cover all of the poems as much as we can for the 2026 DSC literature and exam. I try to make these as descriptive as possible, but we here at the YouTube channel, we don't cover any practice questions in relation to poems. I kind of leave that up to my tutoring classes for students who are enrolled in those tutoring classes. So once again, if you are anybody who's looking for a tutoring lesson, or if you want to kind of push up your grades for your DSE exam, and you're kind of confused maybe on how to work on an essay question, how can you potentially improve your skills so that you can kind of ameliorate your grade, you can always feel free to email me. My particular email address is going to be shrutikaren.k@gmail.com. So if you have questions about tutoring classes specifically, this is the best place to reach me at. However, if you have questions specifically to anything I spoke about at a YouTube video, for example, if I'm covering this particular poem and you have questions on them, you can actually mention it in the comment section below of this YouTube video. I consistently look at them and I do respond to almost all of them, so feel free to mention it down there. So in today's kind of lecture, in today's poem, we will be speaking about There Is a Certain Slant of Light. And our poem kind of looks like in this way. So I had this poem with me. I had to take a little screenshot there, which is why you can kind of see that in blue little outlines everywhere. My screen might be a little bit laggy, so just bear with me as you kind of see all this. So right now you should be able to see a comfortable version of that poem, and we're going to go ahead and read this. So, There's a Certain Slant of Light by Emily Dickinson. There is a certain slant of light winter afternoons that oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us, we can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are, none may teach it any. This the sealed despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens. Shadows hold their breath. When it goes, this like the distance on the look of death. So one of the things that I kind of want to bring to your attention is the fact that we have a large amount of pauses throughout this entire poem, and in fact we have a specific literary technique which is associated to these pauses, which we call as caesura. So if somebody is not aware of that, that's a specific literary term. Just as a side note though, whenever we are speaking about something called run-on lines, or something that does not involve any kind of, let's say, constant pauses, we call those as enjambment, or you could even go ahead and just call it run-on lines, which is perfectly fine. And those are kind of like the two little contrary literary terms, you could almost say. So in this particular poem, you'll notice a lot of cajoura. Now, particularly, one of the reasons why I think that might be the case could be simply because the reader wants us to pace ourselves while reading. And you'll notice that as we kind of go along reading this analysis, I find this poem very closely related to inner conflict, right? And by inner conflict, it just means that our constant, you could almost say, opposing views within ourselves. It's just everything's within ourselves. And the fact that we have pauses there is to highlight the constant change of thoughts. And she gives us those pauses for a chance to kind of think about these little changes in our thoughts. Now, I intend actually to separate, or you could almost say dissect, this particular video on this poem into two separate parts. Primarily, the reason is because I usually prefer everyone has a chance to think about what the poem means. After I've read it, I've given you a little bit of hints. I want to give you a few days to kind of figure things out, especially if you are a person who consistently kind of watches the YouTube and you consistently look through the YouTube videos. It's always nice to give yourself a little pause. However, if by the time you watch this YouTube channel and both part 1 and part 2 is already out, I'd say my advice would be to kind of look through the entire video of part 1 first, understand some of my thoughts on the poem, give yourself maybe a few hours, a few days, and revisit the channel again and watch part 2 and watch the entire video, and maybe share with me what you thought was your opinion, right? Because as I always say, opinions can be very subjective, but when you kind of have like your evidence to back it up, you can kind of show the objectivity that you tried to bring inside the poem itself. So evidences are very important, or the reasoning behind the way you thought about things is extremely important. So I also want to bring to your attention on the fact how Emily, or you could almost say Dickinson here, she makes use of capitalizations. That would be a good place to kind of start, to kind of think to yourself, why are certain words actually capitalized? And when I say capitalized, they're not something that's at the beginning of the sentence, but somewhere like in the middle of every line almost across these 4 stanzas. So you might just want to think, why is that the case? Does it represent anything specific? So that would be a good place to start. Another place that I think would be lovely to also think about would be to notice this heavenly hurt. I want you to maybe spend some time to think about what does that mean and how does it relate to what we've been speaking about. Just as a little bit matter of support, in this next slide I've kind of written down maybe 2 things that can be extremely confusing. I assume the rest of the words should be fairly easy to catch up. If not, feel free to, mention it down in the comment section below, or provide definitions and help your peers to kind of, make it easier for every one of us as a community to come together, share opinions, and, work through these definitions together. So here, when you see heft of cathedral tunes, I've shared here that it refers to the rays of the church music, the organ music that resonates throughout the entire cathedral. So, You can almost, you have to think about this a little bit. I won't give this away, but I want you to put some thought and think about it. What exactly is oppressing? And you see the word like here, so we're making use of a simile. I want you to think, are we comparing the winter afternoons that is oppressing the light? Or in fact, are we saying the light is oppressing the mind? Now, I want you to, sorry, not oppressing the mind, but oppressing the winter afternoons. So just referring back to the first two lines that are there in the first stanza. I also want to bring to your attention that Emily Dickinson is a poet who became famous after, sometime after her death. But I personally really enjoy reading her poems because I see it as a huge relevancy to the modern world. Uh, Sometimes I do wonder, like in what was her opinions when she was writing this poem. Maybe what we think today was maybe not something that she had in mind when she was writing this particular poem. I obviously think from a more modern perspective, so I tend to bring those ideas in with evidence that I can kind of see with the poet's background and the way it's been written in the poem. But it's always nice to have a different perspective. So if at any point anyone has a different perspective from mine, feel free to mention it down in the comments section below, and I'll definitely spend some time reading those. Now, also, another thing that I want to bring to your attention is the fact that here you'll notice that, so again, I'm just trying to bring things to your attention because I want you to kind of explore yourself. But in the next part, I would give more analysis in respect to my observations. So you'll notice here that the poet or the speaker does not make use of scars. There's no plural form, and you'll notice that this is only a kind of singularity. So it's almost as if the poet knows that there's only one specific scar that you can even potentially get. So it's very interesting in that sense. And the other thing I also want to bring to your attention, as I've mentioned before, is heavenly hurt, right? So something that's hurtful but also causes a sense of peace. So it would be hurtful yet soothing experience, you could almost say. So you might want to take a step back and kind of figure out why this may be the case. Why exactly may this be actually a heavenly experience? And you're going to notice none may teach it any, right? So there is an internal difference where the meanings are none may teach it any. So what does this any refer to? Does it refer to like the fact that nobody can teach us a particular thing, but what exactly has been taught, or how is it related to anything with the particular first stanza? Then we can see imperial affliction. So as I've kind of mentioned it here as well, it just refers to the idea of suffering. Okay, so that's the idea. And when it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. When it goes, this like the distance on the look of the death. So think about it. Why might you have particular letters capitalized than the other ones? So that'd be a good place to start. And I think I'll pause here for now for the first part at least. I will give you some time to think about things. And I really look forward to reading a lot of opinions in the comment section below. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Just once again, I will be leaving my email address here for anybody who may have questions. It should also be found in the description below. And with that, I'm just going to end today's video and today's lecture, and I hope to see you in the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.